Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Adrienne Gilliard here with Sandra Bazan, and we're from the ELC's Inclusion Team, bringing you Behavior Bites tidbits. So, welcome to the month of August, where we are at the beginning of our school year. And Sandy and I are talking about all concepts that are vital to setting up your classroom, your students, getting and setting yourselves up for success with this new school year. So, our tidbit topic for today is your room, your flow, and setting up your classroom developmentally appropriately so that you can eliminate a lot of the challenging behaviors. What we know is that the environment sends powerful messages to our children. And a carefully planned environment can help preschoolers feel calm, secure, while at the same time, it makes them feel inquisitive and engaged. So there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. And Sandy and I are going to take a little bit of time and explain what some of those components are. All right, so Sandy, one of the ways that we think of when we are trying to make this classroom developmentally appropriate for the new school year and all of our new bright students is we look at the classroom and how it feels, making it have a home-like type feel, you know? And so what suggestions do you have for making it feel more homey?
I think, first of all, how exciting is the first couple of days of school, the first new year? It almost feels like you get a fresh start every year, which is one of the things I love the most about being a teacher. And it was also one of the most anxiety producing, right? So it's just like, oh, what am I going to do different? How am I going to have what's new? And then I don't know about all the other teachers out there, but some of us get stuck in a rut and we continually make our classrooms look the same
The same way.
every year.
That used to be me.
That was me too. Oh, but because it works so well, right?
Right.
It works so well. But I want to say that what I continued to keep the same was pretty much like where the centers were,
Right.
that kind of flow. But every year I brought something else in. Every year I added another extra kind of like something. And it was more so, and it's going to sound, I don't know, it was for me.
Right.
So when I walked in the room, in my classroom, listen, we spend how many hours a day at work? That's the same amount of time that our children, our students spend in our classrooms. Why wouldn't we want to make it inviting? Why wouldn't we want to
Exactly.
make it cozy? Why wouldn't we want to make it a space where, number one, I want to go to every day? Because if I have to be there every day, it's got to feel like I belong, right?
Right.
And that sense of belonging is what we're looking for. That sense of
Mhm.
home is what
That
we're
sense
looking
of home is
for.
what we're looking for. And in terms of like little touches that you can put in your classrooms for aesthetics, you can bring in I never had a green thumb until now, but you can bring in real live plants to make it look home like, soft neutral colors with like your throw pillows.
Throw
Um,
those comfy, cozy areas, like maybe a bean bag or, just things, blankets, maybe like a cozy blanket, maybe, I don't know, rocking chairs, like a reading rocking chair. Again, we have to take into consideration when we are planning even the hominess of our classrooms,
mhm.
the age
That
that
age of the
we
children.
are going to be, involved with for this academic year.
Mhm.
And that's what's going to drive, what your classroom really looks like. But those touches, like you said, a plant, okay, great. And guess what? It's science.
Mhm.
So look at already, you're making it homey and you're tapping into that science natural area that you could definitely put the plants in, right?
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes a class pet. Mm, I listen. If you are the type of teacher that can handle that,
Mhm.
go for it. I was never that kind. I don't like creepy crawly things. I'm not really into like. So for me, plants worked really well. Maybe like a soft lamp next to my reading rocking
Mhm.
chair, um, furry, cozy, I don't know, area rugs, different area rugs to
Right.
delineate the different areas in your
Different
room, but
areas.
also create the sense of like home. Pictures,
Exactly.
pictures.
And, and don't underestimate having like a framed picture, not just the poster that
No,
slap up on the wall, but
your
like a nice
pictures.
little frame. Yeah. And the children's pictures, and you can,
Pictures of
put say,
your family, so that that's a
absolutely.
conversation point. You ask your parents to bring in pictures of their families, and you put those up all over. I mean, what better way to invite these kids in with open arms, like this is your space,
Right.
and then take hints from them.
Exactly. And Sandy, one thing that you said was, you have to consider the age groups of the children. So what that does is brings us to the next point, which is considering the needs of all of the children in your care. And so you recognize that the children spend so much time in the program, and everybody needs breaks. So you need to have places for different things, places for your group activities, and places for storage and display, and places for privacy. Because let's face it, there are some times when children want to take a break away from the group. And this is even, of course, this is with your preschool age children, but I want to also note that this is also very true for your infants and your toddlers. Sometimes we have infants and toddlers that are having a really rough time and they are crying, and you have other children where the crying is getting to them just as much.
Right.
So they want to have a little bit of privacy away from the group. So we have to consider the needs.
Right. And so that's what I was talking about. So I wouldn't have a rocking chair in my room if I had those crawlers, right? Because you never know where that crawler might be. And now I'm rocking back and forth and I smashed a hand or something,
yes.
So again, you have got to be, I've said it a million times, we have got to be experts in the developmental age. What is appropriate for that age group? And now I'm going to build my world around that. Right. And so I think it's really important to really, really consider, make sure that you understand the need, like you said, the needs of your students, and that you come from that point of view. Also, you said something that last one of the other tidbits where you actually got to the level of those students.
Right. So that you can see the environment the way that they see it.
At their perspective. So after all of this stuff is put into place, go ahead and crawl on your hands and knees if you need to, just to kind of make sure that, okay, everything looks good from this angle. I think that's one of the best advices that I've heard from you in a while. Like I never thought of doing it that way.
Right.
I never just did. I figured, whatever, I'm just going to keep my room. But now, once you said that, it clicked. It made so much sense. I mean, we come down to their level to speak to them. Why not come down to their level to see what their world looks like, their physical environment? So
exactly. And so when you do all of that, when you're looking at the environment from their perspective, what you're doing is planning ahead. And that is another tip for, making your classroom developmentally appropriate to avoid some of those challenging behaviors. Consider how you're going to use the spaces for group activities, for storage and display. It's all about the way you organize your classroom. So, list all of the materials that you're going to need ahead of time for each of those spaces, and exactly what you're planning for.
And when you are putting things away, label. Make sure that everything is labeled. Make sure that everything has a place, and there's a place for everything. And your classroom is inviting and not cluttered. And I mean, there's nothing better than being a 4-year-old and knowing exactly where to go if I needed, I don't know, markers, or if I needed like bingo dollars, or if I'm looking for Play-Doh. It makes sense to them. It makes sense to them.
Absolutely. And while we're doing all of this planning ahead, like Sandy said, knowing where, so things are accessible. They know where they can go to get the markers. They know where they can go to get certain supplies, but there are also places for their own personal storage that lets them know that this is where they belong. And this is even in terms of just their cubby with the picture and their name on it. They know that this is my stuff. This is where my things go. And while you're doing all of that too, like our final way is making sure that we're keeping safety a priority when we're designing our spaces and all of our little areas. making sure that we can supervise all areas, because let's face it, we have to have eyes in the back of our heads, even though we don't have eyes in the back of our heads.
Oh, we do. We grow them. We have got to grow them.
We do.
We have to grow them.
And that's including those, when I said that children need those private spaces and private areas, that's including making sure that those areas are private, but that you can still supervise those areas
and
so
you can
that
see
all
absolutely
are safe.
And definitely safety has to be at the forefront of our brains, right? And so, and understanding that all your setup, all the excitement is changeable. Be flexible. Be okay to rearrange furniture. Be okay to say, you know what, I thought that bookshelf there I thought it looked great there. It was a perfect area, it fit. But now I see that I have a student who's climbing it because it's next to the window and they want to peep out the window.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'm going to put this somewhere else where they can't do that.
Where they can't do it. And if that just brings me to when I was a toddler teacher, the classroom was set up in a very nice and organized way for the first 4 months. As those toddlers began to develop and they, were getting different skills, they also were learning different things about the classroom. So then they knew, okay, if I crawl on this bookshelf, I can get to this easier. So to prevent injuries and to prevent these challenging behaviors that were going to occur, when they came in the next morning, everything was rearranged. So, and not only was it safe, that also lets you know that they're kind of getting bored with the setup. So when you rearrange the room, they're no longer bored. They're different. Things look different. So they have to figure. Exactly. It's inviting and exciting.
Exciting, inviting. It's different. I mean, you think about how we feel when we rearrange our own living rooms, or when we rearrange, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever space, it almost feels like a brand new space. Right. So what better way to reel these students back in? Especially like you say, as the months go on and they start to get very comfortable, and then they, it loses its luster, right? It loses its excitement. Switch it up a bit. You'll see how fast, you want to get their attention. Change a center from here to there, move a table, combine. There's so many different ways. I would suggest going on Pinterest for really if you're a visual learner like I am, right? So I went, before setting up my classroom, I went on Pinterest. I went down the rabbit hole and just looking at because people have such amazing ideas. You can pull from different ideas and like, oh, you know what? I never thought of putting it that way. What a phenomenal, and just try different things. Exactly. Again, with safety at the forefront and making sure that you are really, really focusing on those developmentally appropriate need practices and those needs of the children.
Right. And the classroom and the way it's set up, the way that it's designed and structured, it sends a message to children. And we want that message to say that I can do things on my own here. This is a place that I can trust. And by organizing your room in those simple ways and adding those small touches, it makes your classroom a more effective space. And absolutely. So, yeah, it does.
Absolutely. The other thing I was going to say is not only for the children, but it shows the parents.
Yes.
I'm reflecting now. My boys are full grown and gone and off on their own. But I remember walking into their preschools when I was interviewing the preschools, right? Because but I remember walking into this particular preschool and I was like, this is it. And I remember saying, this feels like home. This is, as a parent, can you imagine that first day, maybe a first baby, maybe first day. Yeah, that is a lot. And when we take the time as educators to pour ourselves into our spaces, it is noticed and it is noted by parents. And absolutely. Now you're already building relationships and rapport, and maybe inviting the parents, anything you want, anything that makes them feel cozy. If you want, you can bring it in, a special picture, a special item of the house, whatever. You can open this up if you want or not. It's up to you. Again, every teacher has their own way of doing things, but I think that it's one of the ways that we communicate nonverbally with our parents and our families and our students. We want you here.
Mhm.
We enjoy you here. This is our house.
Our
This is
space.
our home. This is our school family. What
Mhm.
better way?
Right. And I also want to say too, Sandy, with making sure that we're encouraging those partnerships with families, sometimes we have families that may need resources and may need help and they don't feel comfortable asking you. So if you have a small little nook, a small little area in your classroom where you can provide brochures about different community resources,
Mm,
even if you can provide brochures, I had a little area in my room where I had tips on biting. I had tips on potty training, and it was based on my toddler age group and those milestones and the ages of development. So if you can provide, and not only that, if you have, we have a homeless problem or issue in our community.
we
So
do.
if you have any type of community resources that you can stick a number up somewhere, and they may feel more comfortable going to look at those things versus verbally asking.
Right.
So those small, simple little touches are very instrumental in, creating those bonds and partnerships. So
You just said something that just, tugged at my heartstrings when you said the transient, like the homeless community, right? Do you know the impact we as educators have to provide a space that feels like home for 6, 7, 8 hours a day to a homeless child?
right.
Huge responsibility, huge
Huge.
honor, huge honor. And I think that we need to see it from that perspective, not just for the homeless, students that we service, but across the board. We don't know. We
We
don't
don't know. We
know.
never know what silent battles people are fighting.
We don't know. And so taking that perspective on as well as we set this up, I
Mhm.
mean, I think if we pour ourselves into our classrooms, really pour our love at like what we like, it translates, it communicates something.
It does.
And I think it's the first step to a phenomenal school year. Well, let's cross our fingers, right?
Absolutely. It
It's gonna
does.
be great. It's gonna be great.
It is. All right. So, as usual, if you're experiencing any challenging behaviors with any of the children in your classroom, you can always reach out to Debbie K on our warm line, where the number is 954-295-0672. And if you found this video and other videos of ours helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.